It is completely astonishing that the ancient Greeks firstly had the conception of making this technology, and second, the ability to actually physically make it.
When they found that ancient Greek computer thing, what is that called?
The Antikythera mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, that testifies to a lost navigational skill that we have not taken account of before.
Incredibly complex, and it took a long time for them to figure out what that even is.
Yeah.
What do they think that is now?
It was astonishing. We've had to rethink the history of technology completely as a result of this single object. It's such a clever, extraordinary, sophisticated machine. Completely shocking for ancient Greece.
They thought it was just corroded metal. Turns out, it was the world's first computer. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera pulled up what looked like a lump of corroded bronze. For decades, no one understood what it was.
But if the Antikythera mechanism really was an ancient computer, then what was it designed to do?
But when scientists finally scanned it with modern imaging technology, they realized something shocking. It was a 2,000-year-old mechanical computer. And what they discovered inside this machine changes everything. But before we get there, make sure you're subscribed, because this story only gets crazier. The storm that changed history. Picture this scene from Easter 1900. A group of Greek sponge divers from the island of Symi were sailing through the Aegean Sea, heading toward their fishing grounds off the coast of North Africa. Captain Dimitrios Kondos and his crew encountered a violent storm near a tiny island called Antikythera, wedged between Crete and mainland Greece. They had no choice but to drop anchor and wait for calmer waters. When the storm finally passed, the divers decided to search for sponges in the local waters. One diver, wearing a heavy canvas suit and a copper and brass helmet, descended to a depth of around 45 meters. What he found when he reached the seafloor left him shaking in terror. He scrambled back to the surface, mumbling frantically about a heap of dead naked people scattered across the rocks below. Captain Kondos thought his diver had nitrogen narcosis, a condition divers sometimes experience at depth that makes them confused or hallucinated. To prove him wrong, Kondos suited up and dove down himself. When he returned to the surface, he was holding the bronze arm of a statue. The dead people were actually magnificent marble sculptures from ancient Greece, lying among the wreckage of a Roman cargo ship that had sunk over 2,000 years earlier. This discovery triggered the first major underwater archaeology operation in history. The Greek government quickly dispatched vessels from the Hellenic Royal Navy to support the salvage effort.
When they come across the remains of an ancient shipwreck.
What they'd discovered was the wreck of a Roman-era trading ship. And soon it was apparent that there was a lot of archaeological stuff on board.
From November 1900 through 1901, the sponge divers worked alongside the Greek Education Ministry and Naval Forces to recover artifacts from the wreck. The operation was dangerous. One diver named Georgos Kritikos died from decompression sickness, and 2 others were paralyzed. Despite these tragedies, the team managed to pull up an astonishing collection of treasures. They recovered bronze statues, including one called the Philosopher and the stunning Youth of Antikythera. They found pottery, unique glassware, jewelry, and coins minted between 70 and 62 BC. Among these magnificent artifacts was an unassuming, corroded lump of bronze and wood. Nobody paid much attention to it at first. It looked like nothing more than a chunk of oceanic debris, totally overshadowed by the beautiful statues and precious objects surrounding it. The accidental discovery that stunned the world. All the recovered items were transferred to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens for storage and analysis.
Dozens of priceless artifacts were salvaged from the wreckage, including one object that defied explanation.
The corroded bronze lump sat among other artifacts, largely ignored. Then, on May 17, 1902, something extraordinary happened. Archaeologist Valerio Stais was examining the objects when he noticed something unusual about that neglected bronze chunk. A piece of the lump had cracked and broken off, revealing what lay inside. Stais spotted a gear wheel embedded in the corroded bronze, along with legible Greek inscriptions. This was shocking. Before this discovery, historians believed the ancient Greeks only made simple, fixed gears for basic purposes. Finding precision gear wheels with tiny teeth, similar to those in modern watches, seemed impossible for technology from over 2,000 years ago. The device was housed in what remained of a wooden-framed case, measuring roughly 34 centimeters by 18 centimeters by 9 centimeters. The bronze had transformed into a mineral called atacamite during its time underwater, which caused it to crack and shrink when brought to the surface. The entire mechanism had fused into one corroded mass, but researchers eventually separated it into 3 main fragments. Today, those pieces have been further divided into 82 separate fragments after extensive conservation efforts. The largest gear measures about 13 centimeters in diameter and originally had 223 teeth. These weren't crude, roughly cut teeth either. They were precisely manufactured, each tooth about 1 millimeter long. The level of craftsmanship required to create such tiny, accurate components was staggering. This single discovery challenged every assumption about ancient Greek technological capabilities. For decades, the object baffled scientists. Early researchers could see it had gears and inscriptions, but understanding what it actually did proved incredibly difficult. The fragments were severely damaged, corroded, and covered in limestone deposits from centuries underwater. Reading the inscriptions was nearly impossible with the technology available at the time. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, remained one of archaeology's most frustrating mysteries.
Now kept in a museum in Greece, the 2,000-year-old device is split into 82 fragments, and much of it is missing. But in the years since this discovery, modern technology has vastly advanced what we know about the mechanism.
The first clues from X-ray vision. The breakthrough came from British physicist and science historian Derek de Solla Price. In 1951, Price became fascinated by the mechanism and dedicated decades to understanding it. In 1971, Price teamed up with Greek nuclear physicist Charalampos Karakalos to create X-ray and gamma-ray images of the 82 fragments. This was revolutionary at the time. The X-rays revealed that the mechanism was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Price could see multiple layers of interlocking gears, carefully arranged in a sophisticated system. He published his groundbreaking findings in 1974, proposing that this was an astronomical calculator designed to predict the positions of celestial bodies. Price suggested the original device had been flat and rectangular, about the size of a mantle clock, with a crank handle on the side for operation. However, Price's X-ray technology had limitations. The images were two-dimensional and relatively low resolution. While he could identify some gear arrangements and count teeth on certain wheels, large portions of the mechanism remained unclear. The deepest, most corroded sections refused to give up their secrets. Price had opened the door, but many questions remained unanswered. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, researchers built physical reconstructions based on Price's work and their own theories. But something didn't quite fit. The reconstructions worked in theory, but they didn't match all the physical evidence. Pieces of the puzzle were still missing. The front display, in particular, remained largely mysterious. What exactly did this ancient computer show on its face? How did all the gears work together to calculate astronomical positions?
We've done some computer calculations to work out how accurate the device would have been, taking into account the shape of the teeth, the slop in the gears, and so on. And the answer is, it shows very accurately the sort of behavior of these things.
The game-changing technology of 2005. Everything changed in 2005. After years of lobbying Greek authorities for permission, Tony Freeth and a team of researchers from Cardiff University finally got approval to use cutting-edge imaging technology on the fragments. They assembled an Anglo-Greek team of academics, museum staff, and technology experts for what would become the most comprehensive study of the Antikythera mechanism ever attempted. Two high-tech, non-destructive techniques were employed. First, Hewlett-Packard brought a brilliant digital imaging method called polynomial texture mapping, invented by Tom Malzbender. This technique allowed researchers to digitally relight the surface of the fragments from different angles, revealing details invisible to the naked eye. It factored out confusions of color and texture to show the essential form of the surface, dramatically improving the interpretation of inscriptions and mechanical features. The second technology was even more impressive. X-Tech Systems, a British company now owned by Nikon Metrology, developed a special prototype X-ray machine specifically for this project. The machine was called the Blade Runner, and it was powerful, really powerful. It used an experimental 450 kilovolt micro-focus X-ray source, making it the most powerful X-ray machine available at the time. The challenge was enormous. Fragment A, the largest piece of the mechanism, is about 120 millimeters across and made of heavily corroded bronze. Researchers calculated that if it had the same density as pure bronze metal, 120 millimeters would attenuate a standard 225 kilovolt X-ray beam by 10 to the power of 70. Even their 450 kilovolt beam would be attenuated by 10 to the power of 37. In simpler terms, getting X-rays through that much corroded bronze was like trying to see through a thick concrete wall. But the Blade Runner succeeded. The 8-ton X-ray machine was carefully transported to Greece and coaxed into the basement of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Roger Hadland, then owner of X-Tech Systems, personally brought a top-quality team of experts to scan all 82 fragments. The process required extreme precision. The mechanism was slowly rotated between the X-ray source and detector, while the machine captured thousands of planar images called projections.
And when we first looked at the results, it was astonishing because it showed us not only all the gear wheels in 3 dimensions so we could separate them, but it showed us all these new inscriptions in the fragments as well.
Hidden messages emerge from the shadows. The results from the 2005 imaging were spectacular. The high-resolution 3-dimensional X-ray computed tomography revealed details that had been hidden for over 2,000 years. Inscriptions buried deep inside the corroded fragments suddenly became readable. Gears that were completely invisible on the surface appeared in crisp detail. The X-ray CT data contained 3,000 characters of text, most of which had never been seen by modern eyes. Tony Freeth made the first major breakthrough from this new data. He discovered that the mechanism predicted eclipses in addition to tracking the movements of astronomical bodies. This finding connected to an inscription mentioning the 223-month Saros eclipse cycle, a Babylonian astronomical discovery. The back of the mechanism featured a 4-turn spiral dial specifically designed to predict when and where eclipses would occur. The inscriptions revealed even more astonishing information. They described a complete display of the ancient Greek cosmos on the front of the device. The Sun, Moon, and all 5 planets known in antiquity, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, were represented. The mechanism didn't just track these celestial bodies, it showed their positions as they moved through the zodiac, displayed the phases of the moon, and even indicated important dates like the ancient Olympic Games. One particularly fascinating inscription functioned as a user's manual. It explained how to operate the device, what each dial meant, and how to interpret the calculations. Imagine holding a 2,000-year-old computer with its instruction booklet still partially intact. That's essentially what researchers had found. The inscriptions also revealed sophisticated astronomical knowledge. The mechanism accounted for the moon's variable motion, showing that its velocity is higher at perigee, when closest to Earth, than at apogee, when furthest away. This astronomical phenomenon was studied in the 2nd century BC by Hipparchus of Rhodes, one of the greatest astronomers of antiquity. Some researchers speculate Hipparchus may have been consulted in the machine's construction.
I think it was conceived as a calculating machine that would calculate the theories they had. They had astronomical theories, but could calculate those at the turn of a handle. So it would demonstrate, look ahead, say, what's the position of the moon going to be in 5 years' time? You could turn the handle. They'd tell you almost immediately.
The backstory finally makes sense. With the 2005 data, Freeth and his colleagues finally decoded the structure of the rear of the machine. They published their groundbreaking findings in the journal Nature in 2006. The backface featured 2 main dial systems, arranged as spirals rather than simple circles. This was ingenious engineering that maximized the information displayed in a compact space. The upper back dial was a 19-year calendar based on the Metonic cycle, a period after which the phases of the moon recur on the same days of the solar year. This calendar was arranged as a 5-turn spiral, allowing it to display 19 years of information in a relatively small area. Month names were inscribed around this dial, and it could be used to coordinate lunar and solar calendars. The lower back dial was the eclipse prediction system, arranged as a 4-turn spiral covering 223 lunar months, the Saros cycle. Each cell on this spiral had associated glyphs that described the type and time of eclipses. These glyphs included alphabetical index letters referring to longer solar eclipse inscriptions elsewhere on the mechanism. The level of sophistication in the eclipse prediction scheme was extraordinary. It wasn't just predicting that eclipses would happen, it was predicting their characteristics with remarkable detail. The mathematical model behind this system showed careful planning and deep astronomical understanding. Later analysis in 2014 refined this eclipse prediction scheme even further, revealing an elegant mathematical symmetry in the design. Understanding the back of the mechanism was a triumph, but it also highlighted what was still missing. The front display, where the cosmos was shown, remained largely unresolved. Researchers knew from inscriptions that it displayed planetary positions, but exactly how those positions were calculated through the gear system was unclear. This became the next great challenge.
This was the first shock because anything from ancient Greece simply shouldn't have gear wheels. These were precision gears with teeth about 1 millimeter long, and this was just completely shocking.
The mystery numbers that changed everything. In 2016, researcher Alexander Jones made a discovery that forced everyone to rethink their assumptions about the mechanism. While examining the high-resolution X-ray CT scans of inscriptions on the front cover, Jones found specific numbers associated with each planet. For Venus, the number was 462. For Saturn, it was 442. These numbers represent synodic cycles, the time it takes for a planet to return to the same position relative to the Sun as seen from Earth. The synodic cycle for Venus is approximately 584 days, and for Saturn, about 378 days. The numbers 462 and 442 represent years in complex period relations that allowed the mechanism to track these planets with extraordinary accuracy. Here's why this was so surprising. The Babylonians, who were master astronomers, knew simpler period relations for these planets. For Venus, they knew that 5 synodic cycles occurred in 8 years, which can be represented as the fraction 5/8. But this ratio wasn't very accurate. The Babylonians also discovered a much more accurate period, 720 synodic cycles in 1,151 years. So why didn't the Greek engineers use the Babylonian period relation? The answer reveals the brilliant problem-solving at work. 1,151 is a prime number. Any gear train calculating this cycle would need a gear with 1,151 teeth. Such a gear would be impossibly large for the compact Antikythera mechanism. The designer instead found a period relation for Venus expressed as 289 synodic cycles in 462 years. This ratio could be factored into smaller prime numbers, allowing the cycle to be calculated using gears with fewer than 100 teeth, small enough to fit inside the mechanism. The period of 462 years for Venus was previously unknown in either Babylonian or Greek astronomy. This was a completely original mathematical solution. The same principle applied to Saturn and the other planets. Each had period relations that balanced astronomical accuracy with mechanical feasibility. The engineers had to be mathematicians as well as craftsmen, finding clever approximations that were both accurate enough for practical use and simple enough to build with bronze gears.
The Antikythera mechanism is an astronomical computing device that also visualized the revolutions in the time periods of the Sun, the Moon, and the 5 planets that were visible in antiquity, which are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn.
Solving the three-dimensional puzzle. With these new planetary cycle numbers in hand, the University College London Antikythera research team faced an enormous challenge. Led by Tony Freeth, along with materials scientist Adam Wojcik, imaging specialist Lindsay McDonald, and PhD students David Higgin and Aris Dakanalis, they set out to create a complete reconstruction of the front display. Only about 1/3 of the original mechanism survived. The team had 82 damaged, corroded fragments to work with. Some contained gears, others had inscriptions, and many were just small pieces whose original positions were unclear. It was like trying to complete an incredibly complex three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle where most of the pieces were missing and the remaining pieces were covered in limestone deposits. The researchers used sophisticated computer modeling to test different gear arrangements. They had to satisfy multiple constraints simultaneously. First, any proposed gear system had to match the physical evidence in the surviving fragments. Second, it had to calculate the planetary cycles revealed in the inscriptions. Third, it had to fit within the known dimensions of the original device. And fourth, it had to be manufacturable with ancient Greek technology. Fragment A, the largest surviving piece, provided crucial clues. It features a prominent 4-spoked gear called the main drive wheel. This gear was turned by the input crank handle and rotated once per year, setting all other gears in motion. Earlier researcher Michael Wright had found evidence of bearings and other structures on this wheel, suggesting an extensive epicyclic gearing system mounted on it. Epicyclic gears are gears mounted on other gears, allowing complex motions to be generated from simple inputs. Wright had proposed that one of the main purposes of the machine was to calculate planetary positions using this type of gearing. This insight proved critical, but the exact configuration remained elusive.
It's an analog computer. It doesn't use digital. It uses wheels and gears. This was a device that we wouldn't see again for another 2,000 years until the 1800s.
Ancient mathematics meets modern engineering. The UCL team employed a mathematical technique that may have been used by the original Greek designers. They turned to an ancient Greek method possibly described by the philosopher Parmenides and later discussed in Plato's Academy. This technique, which researchers call the Parmenides process, is an iterative algorithm for refining the accuracy of ratios. The method works by starting with an initial overestimate and underestimate of a desired ratio, then gradually refining these values until they converge on an accurate approximation. More importantly, the method tends to produce ratios that can be expressed using small prime numbers, exactly what's needed for creating gear trains with reasonably sized gears. Using this approach, the team generated period relations for Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. They selected these relations not only for astronomical accuracy, but also for gear economy, using the minimum number of gears and keeping gear sizes practical. This dual optimization of accuracy and mechanical simplicity is characteristic of brilliant engineering design. The team then faced a puzzle with Fragment D, which contains an unexplained disc, a 63-tooth gear, and a plate. PhD student David Higgin came up with a surprisingly simple idea that explained this mysterious assembly. It solved a technical problem related to displaying the mean sun, average solar motion, versus the true sun, actual variable solar motion, and enabled a ring system for the front display. This breakthrough allowed the team to propose a complete mechanical model for the cosmos display. The sun, moon, and planets would be represented by marker beads moving along rings at the front of the mechanism. The complex gear trains behind these displays would calculate each body's position based on the crank input, which represented the passage of time.
Where the planets are in the sky, where the moon is in the sky, what phase the moon is, are there going to be any eclipses this month, and so on.
The ingenious design revealed. In March 2021, the UCL team published their complete reconstruction in the journal Scientific Reports. The paper represented a monumental achievement in archaeological research and engineering analysis. For the first time, a model existed that matched all the physical evidence, explained the inscriptions, and could theoretically function as the ancient Greeks described. The front cosmos display featured concentric rings representing the zodiac and calendar. Pointers or marker beads indicated the positions of celestial bodies. The moon display was particularly sophisticated, using an epicyclic pin and slot mechanism to replicate its variable motion across the sky. This mechanism created a varying speed of rotation, mimicking how the moon actually moves faster when closer to Earth. The planetary displays required even more ingenious engineering. Each planet needed its own gear train to calculate its synodic period. But here's where the design became truly brilliant. By carefully choosing period relations with shared prime factors, different planets could share certain gears. This dramatically reduced the total number of gears needed and saved precious space inside the compact mechanism. The team's reconstruction included sophisticated features for all 5 known planets. Mercury, the fastest planet, required the most complex calculations. Venus and Saturn used the newly discovered 462 and 442 year cycles. Mars and Jupiter had their own optimized gear trains. All of these systems had to work together, driven by the single input crank. Professor Freeth described the achievement with appropriate awe. Ours is the first model that conforms to all the physical evidence and matches the descriptions in the scientific inscriptions engraved on the mechanism itself. The sun, moon, and planets are displayed in an impressive tour de force of ancient Greek brilliance. The reconstruction revealed a creation of genius, combining cycles from Babylonian astronomy, mathematics from Plato's Academy, and ancient Greek astronomical theories.
The X-ray tomography clearly laid out what the gear trains must have been, and also a complete reading of basically all the surviving inscriptions on the device, both inside and out.
The technologies that made discovery possible. The journey from corroded bronze lump to detailed reconstruction showcases how modern technology can unlock ancient secrets. 3 key technological advances made this possible: advanced X-ray computed tomography, digital surface imaging, and powerful computer modeling. The X-ray CT technology used in 2005 was specifically designed for this project. Standard medical CT scanners couldn't penetrate the heavily corroded bronze. The Blade Runner system had to be much more powerful. During scanning, it took 3,052 projections of fragment A alone, rotating the object through more than a complete 360-degree turn to ensure complete coverage. The raw projection data had to be carefully processed. Researchers identified 25 missing projections, where the communication link between the CT system and acquisition computer had failed. They corrected these gaps and reconstructed the X-ray CT volume, resulting in substantially improved image clarity and resolution. This level of meticulous data analysis was essential for reading inscriptions where individual letters were only 1.6 millimeters tall. The polynomial texture mapping technique complemented the X-ray work perfectly. While X-rays revealed internal structures, PTM enhanced surface details. The technique involved photographing fragments under different lighting angles, then using algorithms to create interactive three-dimensional surface models. Researchers could digitally relight these models from any angle, making worn inscriptions dramatically more legible. Computer modeling tied everything together. The team used advanced software like VG Studio Max to analyze the X-ray data, examining slices through the fragments at different angles. They could isolate specific planes, take precise measurements, and test how different gears might have meshed together. The software allowed them to adjust brightness and contrast, revealing details that would have been invisible otherwise. What the mechanism tells us about ancient Greece. The Antikythera mechanism fundamentally changes our understanding of ancient Greek technological capabilities. Before its discovery, the conventional wisdom was that complex geared mechanisms didn't appear until medieval Europe, particularly in astronomical clocks from the 13th and 14th centuries. The mechanism proves this timeline is wrong by over 1,000 years. The device demonstrates that ancient Greek craftsmen could manufacture precision bronze gears with teeth measuring just 1 millimeter long. This requires sophisticated metalworking techniques, precision measurement tools, and steady hands. The gears needed to mesh smoothly and rotate freely despite being made of bronze, which doesn't have the hardness or wear resistance of modern steel. This speaks to remarkable metallurgical knowledge and manufacturing skill. The mathematical sophistication behind the mechanism is equally impressive. The designers understood advanced concepts from Babylonian astronomy, including the Saros eclipse cycle and planetary period relations. They applied Greek geometrical methods and potentially the iterative mathematical techniques from Plato's Academy. They combined all this knowledge into a working mechanical device that performed complex calculations automatically. The mechanism also reveals the level of astronomical understanding in the ancient world. The Greeks knew the moon's orbit was irregular, with variable velocity. They understood the apparent retrograde motion of planets and created mechanical systems to replicate these effects. They could predict eclipses with impressive accuracy. This knowledge existed over 2,000 years ago, passed down from even earlier Babylonian observations. Perhaps most intriguingly, the mechanism suggests these devices weren't unique. Ancient writers mention similar astronomical instruments. Roman statesman Cicero, writing in the 1st century BC, described devices made by the mathematician Archimedes that showed the motions of the sun, moon, and 5 planets. The philosopher Posidonius reportedly created similar instruments on the island of Rhodes. The remaining mysteries. Despite all the progress, significant mysteries remain. The UCL team's 2021 reconstruction is a theoretical model based on the available evidence, but proving it's completely accurate requires actually building it using ancient techniques. The team acknowledges this challenge. Now, we must prove its feasibility by making it with ancient techniques. A particular challenge will be the system of nested tubes that carried the astronomical outputs. The nested tube system is particularly problematic. The reconstruction proposes that concentric bronze tubes transmitted rotational motion from the gears to the display pointers at the front. Creating such tubes with ancient technology while ensuring they rotate smoothly without binding would be extraordinarily difficult. Until someone successfully builds this system using period-appropriate methods, questions remain about whether the proposed design is truly feasible. Another ongoing debate concerns the mechanism's accuracy. Researchers have found that the Mars pointer could be off by up to 38 degrees in some positions, particularly at the nodal points of Mars' retrograde motion. This isn't due to errors in the gear ratios, but rather inadequacies in ancient Greek planetary theory. The mechanism accurately calculated positions according to the astronomical models of its time, but those models themselves had limitations. The question of who built the mechanism and where remains unsettled. Many researchers believe it was constructed on the island of Rhodes, possibly in the workshop of Posidonius or another master craftsman. The ship that carried it was traveling from somewhere in the eastern Aegean, possibly Miletus, Pergamum, or Delos, heading toward Rome when it sank around 60 to 50 BC. But the mechanism might have been made decades earlier, perhaps as far back as 150 to 100 BC. We also don't know how many similar devices existed. Were there dozens of these mechanisms scattered throughout the Greek world? Were they luxury items owned by wealthy patrons or educational tools used in philosophical schools? Jacques Cousteau and other divers have explored the Antikythera shipwreck site multiple times, hoping to find more fragments, but no additional pieces have been recovered. It's possible more of the mechanism still lies buried in the seafloor sediment, waiting to be discovered. Why this discovery matters today? The Antikythera mechanism matters for several profound reasons beyond its immediate archaeological significance. First, it serves as a powerful reminder that ancient peoples were far more technologically sophisticated than we often give them credit for. Modern civilization didn't invent complex machinery or mechanical computation. These concepts have deep historical roots. The mechanism also demonstrates the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration. Solving its mysteries required archaeologists, historians, engineers, physicists, mathematicians, epigraphers, and technology specialists working together. Tony Freeth, trained as a mathematician, brought fresh perspectives to archaeological problems. The imaging specialists developed new techniques specifically for examining corroded bronze. This cross-pollination of expertise produced breakthroughs that wouldn't have been possible in isolated disciplines. From a technology perspective, the mechanism shows how problems drive innovation. The ancient Greeks wanted to predict astronomical events, which required complex calculations. They couldn't use electronic computers or calculators, so they invented mechanical computation using gears. When standard gear ratios didn't work due to size constraints, they developed clever mathematical approximations. Necessity truly was the mother of invention. The story also highlights how modern technology can reveal the past. Without X-ray CT and advanced imaging, the mechanism's secrets would have remained locked inside corroded bronze. The 2005 data gathering was possible only because Roger Hadland and his team were willing to design and build a specialized X-ray system. That 8-ton machine, transported to Athens and carefully maneuvered into the museum basement, opened a window into ancient technological genius. Perhaps most importantly, the mechanism challenges us to think differently about progress and knowledge. We tend to view history as a steady upward march toward greater understanding and capability. The Antikythera mechanism proves this view is overly simplistic. Sophisticated knowledge and technology can be lost when civilizations fall or trade routes are disrupted. The geared astronomical computer disappeared from the historical record, not to reappear until medieval European clockmakers independently reinvented similar concepts over a millennium later. The Antikythera mechanism remains one of history's most astonishing discoveries. Found by sponge divers in 1900, it puzzled experts for decades until advanced imaging in 2005 and a full reconstruction proposal in 2021 revealed its brilliance. This ancient Greek computer proves remarkable mathematical and engineering skill, with modern X-ray scans and modeling finally unlocking its long-hidden secrets. What do you think? Does it change how you view ancient civilizations and their technological capabilities? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.